What's up, peoples? How you doing? Okay, we got. Oh, okay. I can't do that right now because this person here has left. Well, not really left. How can I say this? This person here went into a legitimate business. So, which means that music is not a legitimate business. I really need to talk to this guy. This guy's name is Vinny, and we're gonna get him on here. He is, I mean, a businessman all the way through from the music industry, but still does music, but doesn't. Okay, we gotta talk to him. Hi, Vinny. How are you?
Hey, how are you? I think you did a great job summing that up.
I'm trying, but I'm trying not to be mad at you because music and legitimate business. I mean, you got me going. Like, okay,
Sure.
I need to understand where you're coming from on this one.
For sure. So, yeah, it's kind of a mesh. It's a cluster. It's tangled. But the music side started very early. And if you're wondering about it or thinking about it, I mean, I sang a little bit, but I started rapping probably when I was in the second grade, and I just pursued that for many years. Which later, some stories I'll tell you, got me into business and my true passion.
Okay, I got you. So music is okay.
Music is great. I love it.
Okay. Okay, so let's get into you. Let's talk about, okay, so you have a journey. You have a journey from the music industry into the business and professional industry. And I want to get into that. First of all, how did you get into the music industry?
No, that's a perfect question. And thank you so much for asking. I'm going to probably take you back a little bit. Me entering music was a dare. I have an older brother. I have several siblings, but I have an older brother that was in a rap group and a dance group back in the 80s. And me, I was in the second grade. The school was having a talent show, and I actually stole one of his raps and did it at the talent show. So, needless to say, I listened to him so much that I had it down pat, and I got a standing ovation. This was the same talent show, though, that a guy later that became a star was there, and he killed it. He went by the name of Tevin Campbell. And we were friends. Yeah, and we were friends, and we lived in the same neighborhood in a place in Dallas called Oak Cliff. And so I contributed the way that I could contribute, and that was with that rap until later I started writing them. And then my uncle would come around. My uncle was a well-known street guy. And he would come around in his Rolls Royce back in the early 80s. Everyone looking around like, who is this guy? And he said, hey, when you turn 9, I'm going to give you a album deal, and we're going to figure this thing out, and we're going to produce some cassettes. So I would just basically freestyle throughout the whole neighborhood, on call. Anytime anyone needed me to go, they'd be like, that's him, point him out. And back then they used to call me L-E-V instead of the Vinny. So people call me La Vinny, So that's really kind of how I jumped into the practice of music. But then in school, I really loved the patterns, the A and B, and so forth and so on in poetry. And I just adapted it and started writing my own. And I would put my stories and my life and my pain into that pad. And so when I was about 16, I signed about 2 record deals, and we just kind of went on through there.
Wow. That's kind of a cool story, though. I mean, the pattern of it all. So did your uncle really help you?
My uncle died early.
Oh.
He wasn't able to help me in music, but he helped me in confidence. And I'll tell you something that he said to me that sticks with me to this day. So a year before he passed, he died in 2001. He was a millionaire, multimillionaire. He said, I see you, Vinny. He said, you're on your way. You're going to make it. Just be patient. And I was still kind of young at that time, and I wanted to be like my Uncle EZ, my Uncle Herb. And he just kind of sat me down and put that patience into me. And he was also one, he and my father, they instilled the whole business mindset. So what I'll tell you is this. So in between the rapping and between the school and hanging out with Tevin Campbell, meeting other stars, Roy Hargrove, he's the jazz musician. He was my next door neighbor. So I grew up with a bunch of people that ended up in the music industry. And it was a tumultuous neighborhood. I went through a lot of things. So I had a lot of things to put on paper. I had a lot of things to walk outside of my door, hear the sounds of, smell the smells of, to talk about. And so what my uncle would do is he would come by, he would give me what we call an allowance when we fell on hard times. As my as I grew up in elementary, my father, who was the original businessman, he owned a clothing store. He owned an apartment complex. He started experimenting with the drug that many parents did at the time, and that was crack cocaine. So by the time I was in the fourth grade, he was no longer in the picture. But my uncle, his brother, still came around in his Rolls Royce, a Corvette, or whatever, and he made sure to hand my mother money and to take care of us, I guess, like a family person should. And so for me, I'm forever grateful. So going forward into the music, and then what really led to business. So my dad, before he had fell upon this addiction, he said, guys, you always have to, plan your work your plan, and always trying to make money, try to have something of your own. So what did he do? He went to a store called Sam's Warehouse. Many people know of it. Some may think of places like Costco, but he bought a bunch of candy, wholesale. He explained what wholesale was to us. And then he said, we need to mark it up retail, our retail. And we opened up a little candy house in our apartments in Brockcliff. And he taught us, I would sell candy, and then I'd be like trying to eat more candy than I was selling. He was like, no, this is called the profit.
The profit.
And what you want to do is you need to get a certain profit margin so that I can go, and what we said back then is re-up. I need to go back to the candy store to get more. And then he brought us like a little metal safe, and we would put our money there. So yeah, we ran that successful candy house business. That was the first business that we had, and my dad bought that. And then my brother and I went on to start a bike business where we repaired bikes in the neighborhood. So always had my mind on making money. And when I wasn't making money, when I wasn't trying to do business, I was putting my pain in the song.
Wow. What kind of effect has this had on your life, your upbringing, watching this, happen to your dad, your uncle passing away early? I mean, you're a man today, but what kind of a man are you when it came to that upbringing till now?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. For me, it's been about faith and family. See, my mother was a praying woman. Loved the Lord. My grandmother, both grandmothers. But they grew up in the heart of South Dallas. And South Dallas is one of those places. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. And when these tough times came upon us, my mother was game. She worked 2 jobs. She worked 3 jobs. I mean, which is good and bad, because when you're working 2 and 3 jobs, guess what? You got 3 boys at home, and one 7th grade. Me, I'm 3rd, 4th grade. You got one 5th, 6th grade, and we're in a bad neighborhood, so we started doing things, and those things, in some neighborhoods they call it jumping off the porch. So we started jumping off the porch, doing things that we shouldn't have done, and then we do those things, and then we go to the choir and sing on a Monday and sing in church on Sundays. We go to choir rehearsal until we could no longer battle those 2 things in that dichotomy. So it had a rough one, but the other thing was, it taught me that there can always be a brighter future if you set your mind to it. So bad things happen. Scripturally, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but God delivers them from them all. Well, I didn't know that scripture back then. I was forced to learn it later, and not physically forced, but it made a lot of sense to me. 1987, my father was, he was, I didn't know he was full on crack at the time, because he still had 5 cars. He still owned apartments and stuff. But I found out because my mom brought him to the house. He was thin. My dad was always a big muscular man. He was thin, and he was bringing all his clothes in. He said that he didn't have the store anymore, and he had been shot. He had been shot and robbed. And that was his reason for moving back into the house. He had been shot and robbed, shot 2 times in the back of the head, execution style. Some hitters were hired to kill my father, because my father was a big time guy in the street, and so was my uncle. So having to be 4th, 5th, 6th grade, dealing with your father shot twice. I mean, I was excited that he made it. His name was in the papers. But I didn't know about this crack thing yet. And then my older brother, he set me and my other older brother down. He said, "Listen, I think Dad's on that stuff." And he explained what it was, because I didn't really know what that was. And then we just saw life just kind of go, and take my path to a different kind of place, and sometimes a dark place. And but within that, I went back to some of the good things that I learned from him about business and about being a stand-up guy, and continued in school and all of that. But I really started to pour my heart into music. So I recorded my first album when in 1990-ish, 90-ish. And then we didn't release that one to 1993. And then later I released another, but it was full of pain. But it was full of pain of a teenager who experienced what I had to experience and adapt to survive. And later those things kind of follow me. And I'll share more of that here shortly.
Wow. 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 Talking about these things and going back into your mind about how these things evolved, it's been a while, but how does it feel when you talk about it today?
If you're looking through the camera, I'm probably making faces because I can feel the emotion, right? I can smell the gun smoke, right? I can see the murders. I can see the things that occurred that I just can't unsee. And it's hard to sit here and say, "Oh, all those things made me tough in business." But ultimately, that's what it's what it's going to boil down to. I'm ultimately going to tell you that as a Black entrepreneur, as a Black businessman, as a person that has had different types of titles and positions, working for certain types of tyrants, my upbringing, having my home shot up with AK-47s, things like that, it made me prepared for this crossover lifestyle. It made me prepared for business.
That's crazy to think about that like that. I mean, everybody has a different psychological process, you know, and yours was like, I'm never going to touch that. I'm never going to go into that. When did you decide that you were going to go in a different direction, that you were not going to be a part of what you saw as a child coming up?
Well, I went in the wrong direction, and I was in the wrong direction for many years. In 1994, all of my close friends got locked up. 1992, one of my best friends was locked up and sentenced 50 years concurrently, charged 3 times of capital murder for murdering 3 individuals, and I still haven't seen him since. And it's been more than 30 years. We were kids growing up in this environment, and so I did do things. Yes, I was a member of a gang. I did what I had to do to survive. I was never a part of anything because I wanted to be tough or for some vibrato, because my uncle and my dad, they hated gangs. They thought it was cowardly. My dad studied martial arts. He was good with his hands. He was a boxer. He was in the military. But oddly enough, where he picked up a lot of his street stuff was in the military. So for me, I was already good with my hands. My father had trained us. But where I went astray was anger. I said, if somebody's going to sell my dad crack cocaine, if that's going to be the reason why we have no food in the house, and I have migraines and I'm sick and I'm throwing up because the cupboard is empty, then if I ever get an opportunity to get my lick back, I'm going to get it. And unfortunately, that's what I did. So when I got an opportunity to help ruin the community a little more, I did. But I never liked it. I had disdain for it. I did it as a means to an end. So I didn't have kilo dreams to be some big drug pusher. I was just trying to have food on the table. And so I did it with the disdain, but I quickly jumped out of it because I never wanted to do it in the first place. It was just something I had to do. And so I did that until I was about 20 years old. But during that time, I had an opportunity to meet several people that were very influential in my life. One was a poet, a lady by the name of Imani Pomoja. I think that she was a part of the Back to Africa movement or some Pan African movement. But she really honed in on my poetry, and she got my poetry published, and she was working to try to get it put on like an HBO channel. And this is when I was still a teenager, because I was writing about pain, and I was tattooing my hands up with erasers just because I had pain. I had a difficult life at the time. But she just saw the poetry, and she was like, I didn't know how a person could put these words together. Now, the poetry, if I go back and look at it or think about it, the poetry was always negative, and it had a lot of inferences around death, but it was my way. It was my way out. So by the time I turned 19, 20, I prayed to the Lord. I said, listen, I haven't been living a great life. I know I learned about you. I know about you. The scripture says, train a child the way that he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. And I think a lot of us think that means, if you teach them, they'll never do anything wrong. I did a lot wrong. I did some bad things to a lot of people. But at one point, it comes back. You find yourself in a situation and you end up helping somebody when you should be doing something bad to them, or people think you should be doing something bad to them. So as soon as I got an opportunity, I had two options. I said, listen, my close friend just got 50 years. We're the same age, right? My best friend got sentenced to 12 years, and I was in court with him when they offered him 99 years. And again, at this point, we're about 16 years old. Now, I will tell you, birds of a feather do flock together. So I was with them. I was very much a part of it, but I was blessed to not be involved when the trouble was given out.
Wow.
So I took that as, I'm going to put this on my back. If my friends can't be here, they've essentially lost their lives. I gotta fix myself. So I started reading self-help books. I got a summer job in the city of Dallas, working with the elderly, working as an assistant social worker, and that I needed that. I was working with the elderly, protecting them from the city. So when people would go out and write code, they would say, there's paint chipped here, there's this there. If you don't have your grass cut, in the next X amount of days, they're going to put a lien on your house, and ultimately they're going to take your house. Well, I had an opportunity to learn from some brilliant people working in Dean Lavelle's office in East Texas State University. So how to plug in data, reading about the liens, and just trying to figure out ways to help them. So I'd take pictures, work with the social workers, we'd meet about it, and we'd go out to their homes, home visits, site visits often. And that helped me with the compassion that I needed to give back to the community. It helped me learn the digital aspects of business, if you will, because back then, I don't remember what it was called. It wasn't Word or Excel, but maybe, I want to say Linux or something that I had to do, and I don't remember what it was because I was still young. But it helped me. And by learning that and actually getting a good feeling by helping someone instead of destroying the community, it led me in a different path. And my social worker boss, she lived in South Dallas, and she would come all the way to South Oak Cliff to the trenches to pick me up, take me to work. I'd catch the bus home. And I said, I want to do something like that to make a difference. And so I just incorporated that. So now you have music, you have substance abuse, you have violence, you have drugs, and now you have some compassion that has been kind of drilled into me. So by that time, I was like, listen, the next moment I get, I'm going to do something different. So I signed up to go to the military.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I signed up to go to the military. And this is a funny one. So I signed up to go to the military. I'm supposed to go and sign the contract and see where I'm going to go, take my test, whatever that is. I had a buddy of mine. He was still in the criminal element. He was a pimp. And he said, hey, I just want to pick you up. Let's just go to this place. He said, I lost all my money on the dice game. He said, but I hear that this job called ATC, they'll hire about anybody. They don't care, as long as you don't have a criminal background, they'll hire you. He said, "Will you ride with me?" I said, "Yeah, I'll ride." So I rode up there, and I always dressed in suits, but I would have these gold and diamond rings on and stuff. But I rode up there anyway, and so I set out in the lobby while he filled out his application, went for his interview, because the interview was really like, can you read, can you write, and you're hired. It was really like that.
Oh, wow.
But there was a typing test. There was a typing test, and this guy couldn't type. So he said, "Man, do you think you can do it?" He said, "Man, they pay $7 an hour, and you get 3 weeks of training." He said, "As soon as I get my training check, I'm gonna go buy me, a couple of 50s and start back selling drugs. Dope is what we call it." So I said, "You know what? They'll pay me, and I can start Monday." I said, "Okay." So I took the test. I was always a smart kid. Took the test, passed it. I could type, and they said, "Look, you look the part." Again, I didn't look the part. I had on a mustard yellow kind of a pimp shirt.
Oh my gosh.
and a suit and diamond rings and stuff and I had fingernails at the time. But they gave me a chance. They hired me. So the day that I was about to really go into that military, I got a job, and that turned out to be one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
And that brought you into the professional field.
Absolutely.
Wow. So you never really dropped music.
I did and didn't. And
Okay.
I'll try to go into that quickly. I'll try to go into that quickly. So music was just the background or the anthem to my life. Because remember, music is just where I stored my pain. Music is where I stored, all of that stuff that I talked about. So when I got this job, music was still in me, so I would still go hang out with my friends on the weekends. I wasn't selling drugs anymore. I wasn't doing anything bad, but I would still rap. I would still perform. But at the time, when you're young and you don't have YouTube, right? Studio time costs money. And again, I mentioned $7 an hour. That wasn't much. So you'd have to save up for a month or so to actually get you, 3-4 good hours of studio time if you're in legitimate business, right? If I was selling drugs, it wouldn't matter. But I was legitimate business, not making a lot of money. So I would, so everyone wanted me to hop on songs with them. So I've been on songs with some of the best. Matter of fact, I recently saw an interview with a Dallas music legend. That's what they're calling him on all the blogs. And his name is Don Chief or Big Chief. And we were all a part of this thing called Grass House Music. And it was just a bunch of local guys who would burn CDs. And there were it's probably Dallas's own Swisher House, right? It launched so many, local careers. And so I would record where I could, that the guy that owned it, his name was Yeldale. He would charge us about $20 and let you do 2 hours. He provided the beat and the music. So yeah, I was still recording. We were selling stuff. But in the back of my mind, I wanted something just a little bit more professional. The music was good, but I was like, if I ever got a chance to do something professional, I would. And so I dibbled and dabbled. During that time, my older brother that I mentioned earlier that told me about my father, he had signed a record deal. Matter of fact, it was one of the most lucrative record deals to come out of the city of Dallas. He was in a group called Black Soul, Funk and Soul. It's confusing, but it was Black Soul. And they had a hit song locally. I don't know if it did anything nationally, but they had a hit song called Slow Your Roll. And that song was everywhere. So all of a sudden, here I am. It's 1992. And I got a brother with, almost billboards. Everywhere we go, people are looking and they're saying, that's him, that's him. So that inspired me. But I wanted to kind of get away from the Grass House aspect, with that local music, and get with someone like him. And so I think I can't remember the name of the record label, but it was either Sony or some little some company. But he signed with, and the deal went bust. I don't think they got paid out of it, but they made some really great music, and they were on the radio. They got in regular rotation, but prior to that, they would have these K104 would have these rap contests. The Nippy Jones show every Friday. And my brother and his group won that thing about 50 times every Friday. So everyone would tape it, and they would start to feature me and my other brother, who went on to have his own rap career. And people liked us too. And so again, I was dibbling, I was in school, got out of school, working a little bit. So I would still record a little bit, but never did I commit 100% until about 1996.
Wow. Wow. And so now you have hustle and grind. Is that at the herenow.com? Is that it?
Hustlaz Grind is something
Hustle's
that
grind. There you go.
Hustlaz Grind is something that originated later. It was the guilt from that I had from not committing 100% to music
Mm,
after I signed those two deals. So Hustlaz Grind came about in 2007. We just released another project when my little brother was released from prison. That is on here now that you can listen to, and it's called We Out Here. And basically a lot of these life stories that I'm telling you about, they're on there, but they're in music. My brother has a very melodic way of singing hooks and things, and so he loves 90s music. He asked me to do a project with him, and I did. But my original album came out as Dallas After Dark, and it was called Bastard Nation, and it went on to sell all overseas. It wasn't, I'm not going to lie to you and say, oh man, I made millions of dollars off of it, because some kind of weird way there was a phenomenon in France, Germany, China, Japan, and Spain, where they had got a hold of my music somehow, and they were emailing the producer at the time, a JP from Kitchen Studios in Dallas, and they said, "Listen, we'd like to buy your CDs. We'll pay you $50 a CD." Well, I still had some inventory left. I'm like, okay. But it took them 2 years to find me. So JP had already knew who pressed up my CD. He probably sold his CDs. By the time I reached these guys, the CDs were going for $500 each. I was late to the party, but it allowed me to release the rest of my music to these guys in China, like I said, Japan, and make all of the money that I wished I would have made way back in the day. So it
wow.
was good. It was called G Funk, and they were looking for Southern G Funk, and mine was just one of those albums. Another one was Polar Bear, Naked Truth, Calluses. There were a few albums, the Grass House albums. They were really loving that, and I think they still may be collecting. So that's what propelled me into the conversation of some of Dallas's unique artists that were local and did well.
Wow. And so now you have the clothing line. Tell me about that.
So Grumpy Uncle Apparel, it's me bottled up in one. One is, I take my pain. I laugh about it. I have a very sarcastic way of communicating. So the grumpy uncle part is really a play on words, or double entendre, because I smile a lot, but obviously I've been through a lot of pain. So when I'm putting together clothing, when I'm putting together shirts, some of them may be the normal thing, but some of them are going to kind of be sarcastic. They're going to push the boundaries. They have satire in them, because that's my personality. We had this thing back in the day. We said, some people call it playing the dozens. We said we rank on you, we score on you.
Yeah.
And so it's me having shirts and things and apparel that kind of ranks on you and scores on you. But it's also allowed me to put another thing that I fell in love with throughout the years of traveling into that and going to see different cultures around the world. So yeah, that's what I do with Grumpy Uncle Apparel.
Wow. Now, Grumpy Uncle Apparel, was that a play on not only you, but also your uncle who died in untimely death?
That actually is. Most people don't pick up on that, but yeah, it's me, and it's the motivation that I got from him. My uncle was, he was bigger than life, and I know that they're, just like they do with these American Gangster and all these different stories. I know that somebody has a story about Easy, because, like I said, he was the first person driving around 82, 83 with Rolls Royces and all that kind of stuff in these neighborhoods. But yeah, he inspired me a lot, and I still look back on a lot of things that he taught me.
I can
And
tell.
one which really relates to business, and I'm going to jump around, but he taught me how to do what we call code switch.
Uh-oh.
Um, Easy bought a bunch of street guy, but he would play as though he's just a country guy. Now, he was a country guy. He came from a little town called Madisonville, Texas. It's out there near Houston. So he knew all the country stuff. He rode horses and all that. But when he was doing his illegitimate business, he legitimized his business by having cattle, by having car dealerships, and really looking this part. So if you're old enough to know who Mr. T was that had all this gold on, my uncle would walk around with $200,000, $300,000 worth of jewelry on, and he'd have a big old cowboy hat and some cowboy jeans and a big old gold belt buckle, and that's how you knew you were talking to Easy Neely. So when he was talking to the Caucasians, he'd switch over, and he would code switch where his words were proper, but they were proper country. Hi to their partner, he'd do all of that. And then obviously when he was talking to us in the urban neighborhoods, he could speak it, just like the rest of us. But we thought he was joking. We're like, why do you, we asked my dad, why do you and her, when y'all talk to people on the phone, when they paid you sometimes you switch your voice. And so I learned about it. And they said, son, we're not joking. It's just, this is how some people will always see us as a threat, because these are big guys. And my uncle, he's about 6'4", about 300 pounds. He's a big guy. My dad's a big guy. And they were big dark guys, and people have stigmas about that with colorism. And so he said, listen, I just make them feel comfortable. He said, the bigger and meaner I look, the less my pockets will do well. He said, so, I throw in laughter. I throw in smiles. And both my dad and my uncle, they had perfect smiles. They had perfect teeth. And so they would throw in smiles, but these were two people you didn't want to have a problem with in life. But they taught me, listen, you can't walk around looking mean. You need to walk around with smiles. And so again, that was just another lesson that I learned in business, and it works.
That's amazing. I wish we had more time. You have such an amazing story. I mean, from Grumpy Uncle Apparel. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in the description box below, as well as Hustlaz Grind, right? Dot
Yep.
here dot here now.com.
Yep.
I want to put and in there. It's not. It's here now.com. And also your Instagram, which is Grumpy Uncle Apparel CEO.
Yes.
And we're going to have all of that in the description box below. I mean, there's just so many different things that you can offer other people because you've gone through so many things, so much, and you're still not done yet. What kind of advice do you give to other people about, being a professional, going into a professional business?
Now, this is perfect. I wish I had more time because it's been great. Honestly, I'm going to want to elaborate on all of these things that I've just slightly touched on.
Yeah.
But when you find yourself in isolation, or you find yourself desperate because life hit you over the head with a bag of nickels, I want you guys to realize that the same way that you can go out and hustle, that you can go out and hit a lick, jug, or whatever, you can actually do some research and get into legitimate business. The parallel that I keep sharing is that I learned some bad things on the streets, but I've been able to cross those things over and legitimize those things. Because when you're dealing with business, the only difference is instead of handguns and knives and bandanas and weapons, you're dealing with mental weaponry. You're dealing with laws of power. You're dealing with, sometimes, spiritual wickedness. You're dealing with some stuff that only going through rougher things prepares you for. So when you're feeling low and you're thinking that I'm stuck, I'm never going to have credit. Everything in my life has to be a grind. I grew up like this. You can modify your life. You can get in a legitimized game. And there's someone here willing to teach you. I'm willing to teach you. I've been with Vinnie, and hey, I want to share my journey with you. I want to share my travel journey around the world, my business journey. I want to tell you some of my business stories, along with some street stories to help you, to groom you, to help you grow. Because there's nothing more that I get pleasure from than to see people pull themselves up by their bootstraps and make something of themselves.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Perfect. Thank you so much for being on the show. Obviously, we're going to have all of your information in the description box below so people can actually go to your websites and follow you on Instagram. Please, guys, follow on Instagram. You know how we are here. We support each other. Thank you so much, Vinny, for being on the show, man. I wish we had more time. I really do, because I mean, the conversation that we had just has to continue. You have got to come back. You've got to come back. We've got to do this again.
I promise you I will. And hopefully I'll just break down a segment by segment by segment. But this has been amazing. You're amazing. You're a gracious host. Thank you so much for having me. And guys, I look forward to seeing you in the near future.
Definitely. We look forward to seeing you back here. And thank you again so much for tuning in. Don't forget to dare to be different. And don't forget to support Vinny. Go to the website, go ahead and listen to that music, and go follow him on Instagram. Until next time, guys, don't forget to dare to be different. Bye.
Bye-bye.